is so good to see you all here in Philadelphia. I must say, I think we have something in common more than just our shared belief in education and parents' rights. I see that Moms for Liberty is coming under attack by the left, attack by the corporate media, protest out here in the streets. Now you know how I feel everywhere I go. But I want to congratulate you for that, because that is a sign that we are winning this fight. And when I see events like they had in New York City where they're chanting some drag queen, "We are coming for your kids," let me tell you something. You start messing with our kids, we've got problems. And I think what we've seen across this country in recent years has awakened the most powerful political force in this country, Mama Bears, and they're ready to roll. And we've done so much on these issues in Florida, and I will do all this as the next president, but I see the issue not just through the lens of a governor or a presidential candidate. I see these issues through the lens of a dad, of a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old. And my wife and I really believe that parents in this country should be able to send their kids to school, should be able to let them watch cartoons or just be kids without having some agenda shoved down their throat. And this has gone on across this country for far too long. 2024 is the time to put up or shut up. No more excuses about why we can't win against the left. No more excuses about why you didn't do what you said you would do. The time to act is now, and I believe if we do it right, 2024 is going to be the year when the parents across this country finally fight back. Now, it can be done, because I can tell you in Florida, we have shown what winning looks like. We have beat the left on issue after issue after issue, and we are able to deliver the greatest Republican electoral triumph in our state's history in November of 2022. This can happen nationally. We will win these battles all across the nation, and we will make sure that this country, not just the free state of Florida, but the entire United States, stands for the rights of parents and for the well-being of our children. Now, in Florida, we didn't just give lip service to this, because it's very easy to do that. People talk and then, you never see follow-up. We have enacted a Parents' Bill of Rights in the state of Florida because we understand that the purpose of our school systems are to support the communities, to support students and parents. It is not to supersede the rights of parents. Parents have a fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of their children, and that means being involved in what is being taught in their school. It also means that every parent in this country should be able to have the wherewithal to send their kid to the school of their choice. We've made that a reality in Florida. We've signed universal education savings account legislation, so the money will follow the student and the parent. And you're in a situation where you can make intelligent decisions. And what we've done in Florida has worked, because it's not just the private scholarship to go to a private school. Yes, that's important. We have 363,000 students in charter schools. They're public schools, they're just not controlled by the school district. And because we've embraced choice, Florida's school districts now offer record number of choice options within the school district. So if you go to Miami-Dade County, our largest county, it's the top performing urban school district in America. You have the vast majority of students attend a school other than their neighborhood public school that they were zoned for. So that's empowering parents, it's creating healthy competition, and what are the results? As somebody that was born and raised and went to school in Florida, I can tell you this wasn't true when I was a kid. The most recent NAEP results, Florida ranked third and fourth in the country in fourth grade reading and fourth grade math, and that's proof in the pudding. So parents should also, in the public schools, have the right to know what curriculum is being used in their kids' schools. And we have enacted curriculum transparency in the state of Florida, so parents are able, and it's sad that we even have to go this far, because shouldn't parents be involved anyways? Why would you not want the parents in? You know, most teachers will tell you if the parents engage, the student is going to do better. And sometimes it's harder to reach the students where they don't have interest from the parents at home. The only reason you would not want the parents involved and that you'd want to shut them off from knowing the curriculum is because you're worried that the parents represent an impediment to you using the schools to advance your agenda. That's why they don't want parents in. So we've done the curriculum transparent, and it's sad that it comes to this, but I guarantee you Florida's better than California, New York, all those by country mile. Yet parents in Florida have had to blow the whistle on inappropriate materials in our schools. They have these books like Gender Queer, which has hardcore pornography, talks about pedophilia. You have a book in Florida that was found in one of the school districts instructing middle schoolers how to use sex apps on their phones. So this is totally inappropriate. And so parents blow the whistle, and obviously no one defends this stuff, and so it gets removed. Now, the left and the media tries to say that means you're banning books. Well, let me tell you something. In Florida, you can buy any of those books that you want, and there's not been a single book that's been banned. Schools, though, have to curate what's in a library or what's in a classroom, and you make decisions about that. You may have one book on George Washington. There's 50 others you could have. That doesn't mean you're banning the other 50. You're making a judgment about what's appropriate. And so to use tax dollars to bring in that type of garbage into our schools is fundamentally wrong, and it has no place. Now, we did an event in Florida. We called it Exposing the Book Ban Hoax. And before I spoke at the press conference, before we had the parents, Tia was at this one, we actually played on the screen a 3-minute video that showed what the parents had objected to. The news stations covering the press conference cut their feed because he said it was too graphic to air. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it appropriate for a 10-year-old school child? So we're standing for what's right. We're standing for what's right. We also have met our promises. You know, a lot of Republicans have promised over the years to eliminate Common Core. We did it in the state of Florida during my governorship. We're also rooting out so-called social emotional learning from our curriculum. And one of the things we've done, since we're the third largest state, we've been actively involved in rejecting textbooks that have ideological indoctrination. And unfortunately, you've seen woke in math books. Some of these social studies books were totally off their rocker, so we raise the objection, send them back. And guess what happens? Because we're an 800-pound gorilla, they make the appropriate changes to the textbooks. So we're winning on that issue. And that's one of the reasons we've been able to do it, is because we've taken action to be very clear on our standards that, among other things, we do not allow things like critical race theory in our K-12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other with your tax dollars. No, we're going to teach true history, and we're going to teach it very, very accurately. We've also leaned in on, and it's sad that we even have to discuss this, but the idea that you would instruct a second-grade student that their gender is a choice or that they were born in the wrong body is wrong. And in Florida, we took a stand against that. We said we're not going to have the sexualization of our children in our schools. And I'll tell you, parents across Florida, regardless of party, they appreciated that. They want their kids focused on math and reading and key subjects. They don't want an agenda imposed, particularly things that are inappropriate for school children, like gender ideology. Now, the left didn't like when we did that. The media didn't like when we did that. And there happens to be a company in Central Florida, some of you may be familiar with, called Disney, that didn't like that. And you know, in Florida, Disney, for decades, whatever they've wanted, they've gotten politically. They've basically ruled the roost. And a lot of people said, well, the fact that they're coming out against this legislation, that means that the governor's not going to be able to sign it into law. There's just no way you can go against Disney and come out on the other side of that. Well, I don't know if that were true in the past, but it isn't true with this governor. We don't subcontract our leadership out to woke corporations. We stand for parents and we stand for kids. And there are a lot of Republicans that are taking the side of Disney and attacking me. Let me just tell you this right now. We oppose the sexualization of children. We will fight and do battle with anybody or any institution that's seeking to rob our children of their innocence, and on those principles, we will never compromise. We're one of the first states to enact protections for women's sports. And you have a situation where you're on the men's team for 3 years swimming, and then you switch to the women's team, and somehow you're crowned women's national champion? So as a father of 2 daughters, I want our girls and women athletes to have opportunities to compete with fairness and with integrity. And that does not allow that to happen when you allow the males to compete in the women's sports. So it's an important issue about making sure we have opportunity. But I'd say even larger than that is when you take someone that swam on the men's team for 3 years, they switch to women's, and you crown them women's champion, you're asking us to be complicit in a fraud. That is not true. And you gotta have society rooted in truth. So don't tell me things like men can get pregnant or any of that. We need to base our society on truth. And that's what we're doing in Florida. We've also enacted protections to protect women athletes from having intrusions into their locker rooms by males. And Florida is the first state, I believe, in legislation I recently signed, where we are not allowing teachers to require students to choose pronouns. We're not doing the pronoun Olympics in Florida, and that's just the way it's going to be. And it's sad that we even have to say this, but we have done, not just through our Board of Medicine, but even now through statute, we have prohibited puberty blockers and operations on gender for minors. It's mutilation. It's wrong, and it has no place in our society. And we need to step up and say this and take action. So it's important that we fight back on the left on all this stuff. And in Florida, show me somewhere else where we've won on all this stuff consistently. And but it's not enough to just beat them and stop them from taking over. We got to have a positive vision of what we want things like education to be. So what have we done in Florida? We've launched an initiative to get American civics back into our schools in a very big way. We need to teach kids about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We need to teach them what it means to be an American. And not only have we done more curriculum, we have a bonus program for teachers. We've created a 50-hour course for continuing education. We've got people, scholars from like Hillsdale College and Heritage Foundation that have helped create this so that you actually know how did America come to be? What are the ideas and principles that have formed this republic? Because no matter what our students do, they're going to go into a whole different host of things. Every one of them are going to be citizens of this republic, and we owe it to them and to ourselves to ensure we're not graduating a bunch of listless vessels that have no clue about why people have fought and died for this country. So they are going to get what they need. And we're going to do that nationwide to elevate civics as something that's important in American society. What else have we been for? As much as we're for choice and all this stuff with the scholarships, I want our school districts to do well. I graduated from public school in the state of Florida. So we have done more increases in pay for teachers than in any time in Florida history, but we conditioned the money could only go to teachers, it could not go to bureaucracy, and it could not go to unions. We've also enacted a positive vision for higher education. And you hear a lot of complaints from conservatives and others about the politicization of higher education, the ideology, and yet how many people have actually done anything about it? So in Florida, our view is very simple. Our public university system is supported by taxpayers, and it needs to serve the best interests of the state of Florida. It is not there to impose an ideological agenda on the students. It's not there to foment political activism. It is there for the pursuit of truth. It's there to promote academic rigor. And it's there to prepare our students to be citizens of this republic. So we're reorienting it into that direction, and we have meat on the bones. And I remember when I was in college, I had never seen some of the leftism that I saw. And I was like, man, this is crazy. But I always told myself, none of this will fly once you get off campus. Once you get into the real world, this stuff doesn't work. And I believe that then. Fast forward now a couple decades, the joke was kind of on people like me who thought this wouldn't get beyond the campus because it's now that ideology has seeped into all these institutions. And so it matters that we get higher education right. In Florida, all tenured professors now must undergo review every 5 years and can be let go. We saw yesterday the Supreme Court uphold the Constitution and say no racial discrimination in college admissions. And in Florida, that's been our law, so we didn't allow, so it's not going to impact us. We're colorblind admissions. But Florida's the first state to go even further than that. We have eliminated DEI from our public universities. They say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the way it's practiced, it's ideology imposed on the institution, and the way it's done in practice, DEI better stands for division, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions. So Florida shows you can not only stand up to the left, you can beat the left, and you can even beat them in institutions that they, for decades, just assumed was their little playpen where they can do whatever they want. And so you can't cede any ground to these people. They are pursuing a very toxic agenda, a very toxic ideology, and this woke agenda is something that's not just theoretical. If it controls every institution in our society, this country will fail. We are not going to be able to remain a free society if we're in the clutches of a toxic ideology. And I saw this firsthand. I happened to be out in California recently, and I went into San Francisco. And what did I see there? Within 10 minutes, I saw people defecating on the sidewalk. I saw criminals be able to run the street. I saw people using crack and fentanyl. Right by the Nancy Pelosi federal courthouse, they were doing this. And that's a result of leftist ideology imposed on a city. Yeah, they lock down, they've let criminals loose, they've imposed this agenda. and the whole society has decayed. And so this stuff matters, and I know some people dismiss the idea that we should be concerned about woke ideology. Some people don't like to talk about it. First of all, just in and of itself, I think is important that we recognize we need to be rooted in truth. Men can't get pregnant, babies aren't born racist. No, none of that is true. And so we're not going to let our society function on false premises. But woke ideology and that agenda affects Americans when it gets captive public policy. Think about our economy. When they do things like ESG, environment, social governance, it's basically just a ruse to impose a leftist agenda on society. The average person will become poorer as a result of that agenda being imposed. The average person will be less free as a result of that agenda being imposed. And oh, by the way, in Florida, you've had, and Tina helped us, when they go with the woke banking to discriminate against conservatives, we've said that that is no longer allowed in Florida. No woke banking, no social credit scores. You treat everybody equally. And we've also said we're not going to accept the imposition of a central bank digital currency in Florida. Watch out for that. As president, we'll nix that right away on day one, but they want to control all your transactions. Won't happen on my watch. Don't worry about that. When woke ideology overtakes education, our students become dumber as a result of that. When woke ideology overtakes criminal justice, the average citizen becomes less safe as a result of that. And so this is an important fight. And in Florida, we fought the woke all across the board. And as president, I will fight the woke in the corporations. I will fight the woke in the schools. I will fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. We are going to leave woke ideology in the dustbin of history where it belongs. So our task is simple going forward. We're called upon to preserve what the father of our country called the sacred fire of liberty. This is a fire that burned right down the street here in 1776 when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to establish a new nation conceived in liberty. It's a fire that burned at a cemetery not that far from here in this state when the first Republican president pledged this nation to a new birth of freedom. It's a fire that burned in the hearts and the bosoms of people who stormed the beaches of Normandy, defeated the Nazis, and preserved freedom throughout the world. It's a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall when a resolute president said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." So it's our responsibility to carry this torch. It's not a responsibility we should shirk from. It's a responsibility we should welcome. We're required to stand firm for the truth. We're required to be resolute in defense of our enduring American principles. And above all, we're required to show courage in the face of enemy fire. And you see it for what you're doing, you get attacked. You get smeared. Obviously, somebody like me, I deal with it when I roll out of bed in the morning. But here's the deal. We are not going to save our country if we are not willing to accept that there's going to be sacrifices, there's going to be arrows that we're going to have to take. And the question is, the people that pledged their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor in 1776 knew that if they didn't win, their heads would have been chopped off. The people that fought for us in World War II knew if they didn't win that struggle, the whole country, the whole world would have descended into tyranny. And they were willing to not only risk their lives, many of them gave their lives. We're not called upon to make sacrifices that grand. We're merely called upon to stand strong against the left and bring this 2024 election to a positive conclusion, but more importantly, be able to actually implement the agenda that we know this country needs. I will get that done, guys. Thank you so much. God bless you all. We appreciate you. No excuses. The time is now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Moms for Liberty co-founder, Tiffany Justice.
I think so.
Yep, ready. Okay, wonderful. So thank you for sitting down with me. You're my governor too. I live in the free state of Florida, and so many of the moms and dads over the past 2.5 years have watched as you have led in Florida. You know, I've shared with you before, I would have moms tell me, I just wish Ron DeSantis was my governor because my school has been closed for 18 months. So when you were going through COVID, right, and our moms were standing out on the side of the road asking you, unmask our children, we had signs made. What were you thinking? Were you surprised at what was happening in the country? And I know there were some hard decisions to make.
Honestly, looking back, I'm surprised that there wasn't more protest, because I think what happened, there was a massive hysteria when a guy like me was out saying, you know, we got to have businesses functioning and schools. I was pilloried. I mean, I was attacked. We were being accused of wanting everybody to die and all this stuff. And so when the moms were stepping out, anybody that was stepping out at that time, you know, you were really doing that kind of at your peril. You were cutting totally against the grain. And so I appreciated seeing that, because I can tell you a lot of what I was doing, I didn't have a lot of air cover for. I mean, when I would come out and do this stuff, I would be attacked by the left, I'd be attacked by corporate media, I'd be attacked by Fauci, the bureaucracy, the White House task force, and even some Republicans. I mean, I had Republicans attacking me, saying it was reckless to have kids in school and all this stuff. So at that time, we were in a situation where you either stand up for what's right, or you just kind of bow down to the mob. And I think that Moms for Liberty has done well, because they were willing to stand up at a time when very many people were not willing to stand up, because you didn't want to face any blowback. But as a leader, your job is to put the interests of the people you represent above your own political hide. And I was getting pilloried for all this. A lot of people said that I frittered away a chance for a second term at the time, because they said that I was cutting too much against the grain of public opinion. And I didn't know if that was true or not. But at the end of the day, you got to be willing to look yourself in the mirror knowing you did the right thing for the right reason, and you let the political chips fall where they may.
So let's talk about running for president. Tell us a little bit about your family. Your wife, Casey, you have 3 kids. Like, let us know a little bit about that. And what has it been like for you? I mean, running for president, long hours, lots of travel. What is campaigning with a big family like that like for you?
Well, it's fun. I mean, I think our kids, 6, 5, and 3, they're at the age, so you know, we, in both governor campaigns, they had no clue really what's going on, right? They have a little bit of idea, but none of the negative. They're just not exposed to it. So in that sense, it's been good. And you know, it's funny, because like at the same time, we're out there doing this, but like we're parents and we're dealing with kids just like anyone. So we were in Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. The governor there endorsed me. He's a great guy. And he's like, you got to come to the rodeo with us after our event. So we brought our 3 kids to the rodeo. The problem was we had to catch a flight back to Florida, and we weren't able to stay for the Bulls. Well, my kids were very upset that they didn't get to watch the Bulls. And so the next week, it just so happens we're in Reno, Nevada, at their rodeo, and we were staying the night because the next day I was speaking at this bass fry in outside of Reno. And so I told my kids, I said, listen, and we flew out there that morning, so we're on Pacific time, but like 10 o'clock at night Pacific is like 1 in the morning. I told the kids, I said, if you guys stay up for the Bulls, I'll be here as long as you want. You can make it.
Awesome.
2 of the 3 stayed up for the Bulls. They were able to see the Bulls, and then we went home. So they were very happy that they were able to do it. And we're going to be taking them for some 4th of July parades coming up on July 4th, which will be fun. But it's a type of thing where, and we did it with Governor too, I used to take the kids to press conferences. I mean, I would literally be at the press conference on COVID, and I'd have like my son Mason or my daughter Madison just hanging out by the podium, just kind of watching, and we do it. And it's just because my wife and I, we just want to spend as much time with them as possible. And so if we can bring the family when we're going, it's great. I think it is good experiences for them, but a lot of it for us is just I always try to be home. Anytime I'm doing stuff like in Florida, I always just try to be home in time for dinner, right after dinner, be able to put them to bed, and then be there the next morning. And so we're juggling all that. My wife is a superstar. Some of you know her, and she does a great job. But I think the issue is, too, this is personal for us because we're living through what you all are living through, and we're concerned about what type of a country are our kids going to inherit, what type of education are they going to be exposed to. And so these are issues that I think are foundational for us to succeed as a community, as a state, as a country, but it's also something we're concerned about as parents. I kind of felt like when I was growing up, there weren't all these attempts to indoctrinate kids like there are now. And so we got to put a stop to it. We've done more, obviously, in Florida than anywhere, but we need to do it nationwide. Education, not indoctrination, needs to be the United States policy.
So I was serving on school board during COVID. I served from 2016 to 2020. Tina also on a school board. One of the things that was so surprising to us, we were sitting there on the dais, right? Parents are coming, and they're really concerned. Their children are being harmed in school. And yet this fundamental right as a parent to direct the upbringing of your children, their medical care, their education, their morality, their religion, it seemed to come into question. And so the question I really have for you that I think a lot of American parents want to know, these fundamental rights that we have, rights that the government doesn't give us, and that they can't take away easily, right? How will you, as the next president of the United States, help us to protect our fundamental rights as Americans?
Great, it's true. I mean, this is, that this is even in question. I don't even think 10 years ago it would have been. Certainly 20, 25 years ago it would have been in question. And you see it. What are they trying to do in California now? Yep. They're trying to say, maybe you have a 12-year-old daughter. Daughter comes to you and says, you know what, I think I'm really a boy. If you don't accept that, you could lose custody of your own kid. That's the direction they're going. And so I don't think that that's acceptable in the United States of America. We can't allow that to happen. So we will pull the levers that we have available to us to be able to defend the rights of parents. And part of being an executive is you're not just the head of like a company. You're the head of one branch of government. But there's checks and balances. There's different constitutional authorities. So you need to know what levers are available to you, what type of leverage you have to be able to bring these things into fruition. Some will be through executive. There's things you can do through federal agencies, like, for example, protect women's sports and not have the gender ideology in the back. There's definitely things you can do on those. There's things that Congress are going to need to do to be able to do that. So we have a good understanding going in on day one what all those authorities are, and we'll pull the levers that we need to. I think it's also important to understand, you only get so many bites of the apple at this. We win. I think we'll win the House and Senate for sure. So you go in, and you have an opportunity. You got to be ready on day one, and you're going to have 6-9 months to start where things will be very possible. Then they go on August recess. Then Congress comes back, and they dilly a little more. Then maybe a little bit in the midterm year, but then they start worrying about the midterms. Then you have the midterms. That could change the complexion of Congress. Maybe you get another bite coming there, but then they're going to start worrying about the presidential election. Then you get reelected, you have a crescendo, you go in, you can do stuff for another 6 or 9 months. Then they start worrying about the midterms, and then lo and behold, after the midterms, you're a lame duck president. And so if you're not ready on day one, none of this stuff is going to get done. And I think what we've shown in Florida is we leave no meat on the bone. How many times have you voted for somebody who promised you a bunch of things and delivered on all the promises? Not very often, I would say. In Florida, we over-delivered on our promises. We did more than we promised. And that's the mindset you got to have. But you got to have that discipline, you got to have that focus, and you got to be relentless to be able to bring all this in for a landing.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's awesome. It makes us very hopeful. So So soon, later today, we're going to hear from Manny Diaz. He's the Commissioner of Education. Has it surprised you as governor to see a lot of different organizations kind of coming through the back door of schools, right? It kind of usurping the role of the school boards and putting this indoctrination into schools. Were you surprised by the level of the sexualization, right? I mean, you showed the video of the books. I heard when you saw one of the books, you were shocked. I think there are still people in America that don't realize this is really happening. So, where do we go from here where it seems like there's a real disconnect sometimes?
No, I think educating the public on what's going on is important. We have not done that enough. We've done it some in Florida. Buckle your seatbelts. We are going to be doing that across this country. So just be ready for that. And why you would be doing that is beyond me. But I think you're right. There's groups out there that just, maybe they have a relationship with the teacher union. So they hotwire this stuff straight in without any debate, without anything. These textbook companies, one of the reasons, and Manny will probably talk about it, we lean in against the textbooks. We just want education, right? If you're trying to impose an agenda, we are going to reject the book. So give it to us straight. And what happens is, because we have such a big population, a lot of these companies have made changes that then make the book a normal school book. But this is going in all directions, and if you don't have kind of a united front against it, it is absolutely going to end up winning the day. Very, very insidious, but I think part of it is conservatives have allowed the left, they just said, oh, education is for the left, and we don't really care about that. No. I'm fighting on all this ground to do what's right, and we have to do that. You cannot cede any ground, because if you cede ground, they are going to take that, and they are going to advance further, and then we end up in the hole that we can't dig ourselves out of.
So we have a few more minutes. I want to talk about Casey for a second. We had hoped she'd be able to join us. I know there were some travel issues, but she's done some wonderful things in Florida fighting for kids and families. And I think right now in this time, seeing a husband and wife together on the campaign trail and the really strong relationship you have has been really wonderful to watch. So can you just tell us a little bit about what that means to you to have Casey by your side as you run for president?
Well, I think she's a phenomenal wife and mother and really just a great first lady. She's been an inspiration to a lot of people in Florida, particularly women, when she successfully battled breast cancer. Tough thing to go through, and a lot of people really saw how she handled that. She's also been very outspoken on behalf of mothers. So she did a Mama's movement for our governor campaign, and her goal was to sign up 1 million mamas throughout the state of Florida. And because it's Florida, we do the grandmas too, so it's both. She ended up signing up 1.1 million mamas throughout the state of Florida. So she's going to take that national and sign up mamas. And I do think, I said it up there, I think moms are the key political force for this 2024 cycle. We have an opportunity to harness all the energy, all the concern, and harness that to good things. So she's done a great job on that. So one thing she's done substantively that I think other states are now copying, she created a program called Hope Florida, Pathway to Prosperity, focused on primarily single moms with children, to not have them be in welfare and on government dole, but to actually get them on a road to self-sufficiency. But to do that, you can't just keep cutting checks. That's never going to work. So she's created a care portal. Someone comes in. Those bureaucrats are now considered Hope navigators to try to link the mother with resources in the community. The portal allows churches to plug in, businesses, nonprofits, volunteers. So maybe the mom has been displaced from her apartment. She couldn't afford the rent. That goes in. You may have a local church come. They put her up. And guess what happens? When those moms, those single moms, end up in the hands of churches or community groups, they don't come back for the government assistance. They get on a pathway to prosperity and self-sufficiency. And so I think she's done a remarkable job with it. But that is a model for how we would do this nationally, to recognize government cannot be the answer to these problems. How many trillions have we spent since the 1960s saying we were going to end poverty? And it hasn't happened. It's made it more entrenched. And so harnessing community groups, harnessing the faith community, doing all that, that gives people a sense of purpose, and that's how you end up becoming self-sufficient.
I love that. It's a wonderful program. I want to thank you for joining us, talking about your family a little bit, answering some questions, getting to know our audience. I just want to let everyone know that after this, we're going to have a 30-minute break. If you look at the screens, you'll see the breakout sessions that we have coming up, Comprehensive Sex Education with Kelly Shinkowski, that you don't want to miss that. You need to know what's happening in your children's classrooms, and Kelly's going to walk you step by horrible step through comprehensive sex ed, Faith of Our Founders in room 2, and Mastering the Spin in room 3. I hope you all enjoyed those sessions. Governor DeSantis, it has been a pleasure speaking to you.
Keep up the great work. We've got a big fight on our hands. Don't back down.